Hey everybody, Stephen Michael Zach here, and today, now that the dust has settled, I want to talk about all the cameras that came out these past couple of weeks. So first off, let's talk about Canon. Now, Canon released this video.
When you invent the game, you own the game. Sure, you let others play the game.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't talk about a camera that doesn't fully deliver on what you're promising. But I digress. Little joke at their expense, I will admit, but let's really get serious and talk about Canon, and I'm going to use my notes here. But let me start off by saying by the R5 and R6 are fantastic photography cameras. If you are a photographer, this is probably a camera you should own. However, as you know, the promise of 8K, the 8K doesn't work. The camera, the R5 especially, has massive overheating issues. Now, I kind of blame Canon's marketing on this, as they should have never marketed 8K video as working video. When they knew that it was going to overheat, they should have just never said, hey, it's a video camera, you're getting 8K video. So that's that I think is kind of an overstep on their part. Now, kudos to them. They do earn the bragging rights for actually putting 8K in a camera, but again, it doesn't really work. What they should have done is they should have either never put the camera out until they had the 8K properly working, or they should have just done what they did with the original 5D, make it a photo camera only. And the last thing they could have done is learn from Panasonic and put a fan in it. So those are kind of my feelings on the R5. I'm sure the internet is flooded with people screaming about the overheating and people trying to record 8K and it not happening. And the R6 is not far behind. It also overheats at 4K. Now, as many of you know, the European tax credit that they would give camera companies to put time limits on their cameras has expired. So at this point in time, no camera that comes out no camera that is going to come out in the near future should have a record time limit. Now, let me talk about what Canon has to do. Canon has to deliver on their video side, especially with the 8K. Now, H.266 is coming out, and that's going to help them a little bit by cutting the 8K down by 50%, and they could tweak their temperature clock within the camera because there have been a lot of reviews saying that, it would reach its core temperature and then they would feel the camera and it was completely cool. So that is something they need to work on. Honestly, I would like to see Canon get back into the game for real. They keep releasing these cameras with either a handicap or problems, and if they continue down this route, they are going to start losing the consumer to Sony and Panasonic more than they already have. And speaking of Sony, let's talk about the new A7S Mark III. I'm going to use my cheat sheet here, but it has full frame 4K E-mount lens, full HDMI, it has backwards compatibility, it has the new CFast Express cards, but it's backwards compatible to SD cards, and you get 2 slots, so you could either run them in tandem or loop them, which is awesome. It also has great autofocus, low light, in-body stabilization. It outputs 16-bit RAW externally into an Atmos Shogun recorder. It's got 10-bit 422 finally. It has 4K 120 frames, a brand new menu system, and finally, a proper tilt-out screen. Finally, welcome to the human race, Sony. You finally ditched that terrible flip up screen, which I have broken so many on so many of your cameras and have had to replace them. The screen is fantastic. And of course, it has the fantastic eye viewer as well. It's probably one of the most accurate eye viewers out there. So kudos to Sony. I think for $3,500, this camera is a steal. If I had $3,500, I would most likely run out and buy one of those cameras today. Now, what do I think Sony has to work on? Well, maybe in the next camera, 6K. I wouldn't go to 8K as we've seen with the Canon. It doesn't quite really fly and the file sizes are really huge, but 6K is still very manageable. Other than that, I think Sony is hitting it out of the park. I have been anti-Sony for the longest time, but now that I think with no record time limit, because there's no more record time limit on a Sony, with the flip out screen and some of the other stuff that Sony has to offer, they've basically made a full frame better GH4. GH5. So very excited for Sony. I may be checking Sony out soon. One thing I wish is that on the photo side, I wish it were, I think it's like you get 13 stops of dynamic range to say 15. I wish the photo side were a little bit better in this camera, but Sony is coming out with yet another camera, which is yet to be announced. I think it's the A7 Mark II or something like that. I think that's going to be more photo-centric, but we'll have to wait and see when the announcement comes out. So let's see. Let's talk about the brand I use, Blackmagic. I think the 12K camera is fantastic. I think it's going to be amazing for people who are going to be shooting professional Hollywood films, professional television commercials. It's $10,000. Am I going to run out and buy one? No, probably not. But if I do shoot my feature, I will most likely be taking a look at renting that camera. Now, I do wish that it had more than 12-bit recording. I know that the red I think is like 15. But this really clearly looks like it's going after the red, Zcam, and RE market. So I think it's fantastic. And I think Blackmagic on a whole is doing great with their whole entire universe from production to post. It's affordable, and everything just kind of works together in a beautiful symmetry. I think the addition of B-RAW, and ProRes is a fantastic workflow. It's the workflow I work with, and I really like it. Let's see. What I want to see in the next version of the Pocket Cinema camera. I would love to see them change the name because it doesn't fit in my pocket. They have the Ursula Mini. I think they should start going with like the Constellations. That's very cool. I think maybe call the next camera the Orion or something like that would be super awesome. But I would love to see some kind of, first off, I would like to see maybe full frame in the next camera. I would like to see any kind of autofocus because the autofocus is pretty non-existent. And because this is a mobile camera, I would love to see in-body stabilization and maybe even a body redesign, because trying to put this thing on a gimbal is really difficult. You have to buy an extender plate to kind of offset it. I would love to see maybe they do just a little bit different kind of a body. Some other things I don't like about the original body is the back screen is kind of at an angle. So it's kind of hard to judge. I always have to go around to the side of my camera to make sure my lens is level. A way to really fix that in the camera I already have is a firmware upgrade to a digital level, just like the Panasonics have. I would love to see that. I think they have one in the 6K, but there's none in the 4K. So Blackmagic, if you're listening, I would absolutely love for you to put a digital leveler inside the camera. That would be super awesome and super helpful. Oh, and finally, I think Blackmagic has to have a flip-out screen. Not that tilt-up Sony-style flip-up screen. People don't really like that kind of a screen. More like the flip-out screen that the Sharp prototype had at NAB in 2019 that they were kind of floating around that never came to fruition. A flip-out screen, flip-out and tilt screen would be fantastic on this camera, especially because it's so light and you actually can vlog with it. Other than that, I think Blackmagic is doing a fantastic job. And let's talk a little bit about Panasonic. We haven't really heard much from Panasonic. So in the GH6, in their next camera, and let me just start off by saying the SH1 is a fantastic camera. It is rock solid, and again, has a fan, so no problems with overheating. But let's talk about what I want to see in the GH6. It must have good autofocus. The autofocus must be solid. You have to have autofocus like Canon and Sony, otherwise people are going to start navigating away from Panasonic, and that new Sony camera, the A7S Mark III, looks pretty darn good. So rock solid autofocus, full frame, absolutely, because full frame seems to be the new fad. And what else do I think that they need? I would love to see 6K 120 frames per second. And again, improve the low light. But I think Panasonic is doing well. I think they need to start moving into the full frame arena, and I think they desperately need better autofocus. So that's it. That's all I have to say about the cameras that came out. Those are my thoughts, but I want to know what you think. So leave your questions and comments in the notes below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to mash that bell button to be notified when we drop a brand new video. And feel free to use the links below as it helps out the channel. I'm Stephen Michael Zach, and I'll see you next time.